I wanted to do a quick video about forgiveness and about the concept of forgiveness, and particularly the idea of Christ always forgiving. And I have obviously always borne an accidental resemblance to the Western iconographic Christ. And it's always really bothered me because I was raised in a very Orthodox, faithful household. And I just see people out there like in the world that attempt to, they're always saying like, well, Christ would, or well, Christ says, or he would do this. And it's almost schizophrenic. You know, it's almost like their imaginary friend is named Jesus, and that he just does whatever they think he should say, or whatever is like ideal for him to say. And it's like he would just forgive me no matter what, like a get out of jail free card. You know, and I can commit whatever sin over and over and over and over again, and he'll just say, oh, and he'll pat me on the head and say it's fine. And now really, what do you learn from that? You know, and are you really seeking forgiveness when in your heart you intend to commit the same sin again? And so what good is it to quote unquote forgive you is to just pat you on the head, tell you what you want to hear, calm your soul, and then send you back out into the world so you can make the same mistakes. And so it's like we have to even define forgiveness. And I define it as there's no ill will in his heart, there's no hatred in his heart. You know, he still loves you, he still embraces you, but that he's disappointed in your continual sin. You know what I mean? And that you would keep coming to him over and over and over again like a child and being like, can you forgive me for this thing I keep doing? And it really, that's when adults start letting themselves off the hook like children. When they're like, well, I kept making the same mistake, but I'm going to keep trying kind of stuff. And they're trying for decades. And they just keep saying like, well, God's letting me off the hook and God's going to love me anyway. And that's obviously true. But I feel like it's become more of a crutch now. It's not a tool for people to bring themselves up. It's like their faith is more of like a soothsayer. You know, their faith is more of like a whisper in their ear that tells them that their every action is justified, that they never have to feel bad for themselves, they never have to have remorse for how their actions affect other people. And this all stems from how I made a video about Jim Carrey painting Jesus Christ and him claiming that he would forgive you no matter what just by looking into his eyes. And I'm like, no, Jim, you have to look into his eyes and then ask for forgiveness. That forgiveness has to be asked for. It has to be sought in the first place. You have to feel that well in your soul of that desire for forgiveness and corrective action. You know, that you're going to make a lifestyle change. You know, you're going to try to purge this sin somehow. And I feel that the biggest sin of Hollywood insiders like Jim is the deception of how they got to power, how people like him keep their power. And it's like the rest of our secrets are not on the same tier as people dying in our bathtubs. Like we fudge our taxes. You know, it's shit like that. I'm not saying I do that on tape. You know what I mean? But I'm saying that that's the average person's secret. The average person's secret, oh, maybe they're cheating on their wife or something. But they're not dead in their bathtub, is my point. So not all secrets are equal, is my other point. And so you have to seek forgiveness for some of these really ugly things instead of just letting yourself off the hook for them over and over and over again and using Christ as a get out of jail free card and saying, well, all I have to do is look at him and all my sins are absolved. Like I'm walking through the arch in Dogma. And it's like, all I have to do is walk through the Christ arch and all of my sins are absolved. It's like you didn't even ask for forgiveness as you walked through. You didn't even say, I'm sorry, Jesus, as you walked through. You just kind of go, like it's a car wash. And, and my point is it should be more of a two-way street. It should be like if Christ existed, you sit down with him and go, you know, kind of like confession. And you go like, well, this is what I did wrong and I feel really bad about it. And he's like, I absolutely forgive you for that. You know, and I love you for your remorse, and he would give you a big hug. But the problem is today that people don't even think they have to seek the forgiveness in the first place. They think it's just tapped upon them like a magic wand. and that they have the impunity to go back out in the world and keep repeating the same sin over and over and over again. And that's what bugs me. And I don't attempt to speak for Christ. I attempt to speak for his values. And I just think it undermines him, and it kind of, it's a very childish perception of him to think that he's like this automatically forgiving robot where you don't even have to ask. You don't even have to say, do you forgive me? And then it's like he just walks up to you and goes, oh, I see you're acting like trash. I forgive you. Like, that's my ultimate point. And that was the ultimate point of my other videos. If I ever make any videos about Christ, they're from the perspective of somebody who's had somebody walk up to them their whole life going, you look just like Jesus. And I'm like, I look like the Western iconographic Jesus. And I'll make one last point because I know I'm going on and on. But I live near a Revolutionary War kind of, what do you call it? Like the historical area. And I would tell people, okay, so I'm getting really sidetracked here, but I've always borne this accidental Western iconographic resemblance to Christ ever since I grew my hair out, and I've always had the same goatee. Like I've never been without it as soon as I could grow facial hair. I don't think I've ever shaved my face, like maybe once for a wedding. I just feel the most at home in this appearance. And like more like Jay from Jay and Silent Bob. That's who I modeled my appearance after. I would always stuff a beanie hat on top of my hair. And I would always have like a snarky t-shirt or something. But, you know, people would say I look like Jesus so much that one day we had a costume day at school and I dressed up like Jesus. And like there was also this guy at school that bore a resemblance to Jesus. I was teasing him mostly. But of course everyone goes nuts with because I wore a brown robe down to the floor. I wore sandals and people are like, holy shit. And I'm like, no, I'm teasing. You know, like and then I start saying we live in a Revolutionary War, you know, area, right? Whatever, like a historical area. And it's like, do you know that the average height back then was 5'7"? And I'm like, so imagine how tall the average person was in 2,000 years ago. And he lived in the desert. So do you really think he bears a physical resemblance to the Shroud of Turin? Really? You think he was this skinny, 6-foot-tall white guy in the middle of the desert 2,000 years ago? I'm sorry to flip it all the way over into being that guy.